H-E-B is a sizable chain of over 420 stores. Their $34 billion in sales each year ranks them among the top 10 biggest chains of grocery stores in the United States, which is obviously impressive in itself, but there are two factors that makes this extra impressive. For one, they have been privately owned for the entirety of their almost 120-year existence. Oftentimes, companies of this size have relied on public stock offerings as a way to raise money, and that helps them grow so large, but H-E-B has been successful enough to do it through reinvesting profits and taking out loans. It really is uncommon for a private company to grow this big. In fact, Forbes ranks them as the 5th largest private company in the country. The other reason their size is so impressive is because H-E-B isn't found throughout most of the country, only in one state as a matter of fact. If you live in any other state that isn't Texas, there are no H-E-Bs near you, and there's a fair chance that you've never even heard of them. The only exception is Mexico. In 1997, it's believed that they took notice of the lack of supermarkets down there, saw it as an opportunity, started opening stores, and have since opened about 50 of them throughout the country. Alrighty, I hope you'll agree that this is sounding like an interesting story, and I promise you, it is only the beginning. So for this video, I want to talk about H-E-B while highlighting what I believe to be 7 of the biggest reasons behind their success. First off, I want to talk about the Butt family. That is the name of the family that started H-E-B back in 1905 and has continued to own and operate it ever since. According to Forbes, they are the 15th richest family in America with a net worth of over $17 billion. There is so much unusual stuff happening here. For example, unlike most of the companies I feature on this channel, especially the ones going back over 100 years, H-E-B was started by a woman. Her name was Florence Butt. She was living in Memphis, married to a pharmacist, and had 3 sons. Tragically, all of their lives changed when her husband developed tuberculosis. He was unable to work, and the family moved down to Texas because of the drier climate, and Florence was forced to find a way to support everybody. So they rented a property where the second floor was a typical family home, and the first floor was an old 750 square foot grocery store. She borrowed $60 from some relatives back home, used it to stock the store with groceries, and with the help of her 3 sons, went on to operate a very modest retail business. They attracted customers by offering free deliveries of the items. Typically, they were transported by one of her sons in a wagon. In 1919, the youngest of those sons, named Howard, took control of things. Then in the 1920s, they opened their second store, followed by 3 more that were acquired with a $38,000 loan, and by the end of the decade, they had opened almost 20 of them. In the 1940s, they opened the first ever store that actually used the name H-E-B. The previous ones were named after the father that had tuberculosis. And by the way, if you watch the commercials, you might think that H-E-B stands for Here Everything's Better, but that's just marketing. It was originally named after the leader of the company, Howard Edward Butt, who was actually in charge for over 50 years, transforming the company over that time from a single store into a sizable chain with sales of over $200 million a year. And even then, for the next 20 years, he continued to serve as chairman of the company until he died when he was 95 years old. Going back, his replacement CEO in the 1970s was his son, Charles Butt, who had been working with the company ever since he was a child. Amazingly, Charles has also been serving in that role for over 50 years now, transforming the company from that $200 million in sales to the $34 billion. Think about that. This company has been around since 1905 and has only had 3 different leaders, each of which came from a different generation of the Butt family. So it's hard to dispute that this family has been a major part of their success. Another major part of that success has come from their employees, or as they like to call them, partners. All 145,000 of them that are generally thought to be dedicated and invested in their jobs. Despite being such a large company, H-E-B's family ownership has allowed them to create a culture that emphasizes values and togetherness and a lot of the stuff that you would get from a smaller employer. Their benefits tend to be more attractive than the competitors, including a stock ownership plan. It was a big deal when they started that back in 2015 because it transfers some of the ownership, said to be about 15% of it over time, from the Butt family to the employees. Again, making everyone more invested in their job. If they do well, the company does well, well and their stock does well. People tend to care about things a lot more when they are the ones who own it. These are some of the reasons that H-E-B typically appears on certain lists, like Indeed's top-rated workplaces or Glassdoor's best places to work, both of which are based on employee reviews. Feel free to comment if you're one of the 145,000 partners, but the bottom line is that people seem to be happy working for H-E-B. It makes them work harder, it makes them friendlier, and those are things that very much contribute to the next reason on my list, the shopping experience. The people in Texas are probably really going to want to chime in here, but you know, if you live there and you need to get some groceries, it's not a bad option. H-E-B is typically praised by the people from the area, to a point where I would guess that they have the most loyal customer base of any grocery store. Some of the things that stand out about the experience, in my mind anyway, would be the selection. They stock each individual store based on the preferences of the shoppers in the area, and there's just a lot of stuff there. These are big stores that are specifically known for their extensive wine and produce selections. They are also known for their private label products. The stuff branded under the name H-E-B or H-E-Buddy or Hill Country or one of the others are generally thought to be pretty good. They started offering private labels in the 1990s and have since grown their lines to over 17,000 products. The stores tend to be clean, they give away free samples, they sometimes have restaurants inside of them. Yeah, the H-E-B company operates multiple chains of restaurants, probably the most famous one being True Texas Barbecue. I'm just thinking about that. Going down to H-E-B and picking up some Texas barbecue, I mean, that's gotta be the ultimate Texas experience. Speaking of Texas, I do think that their narrow market has played a big part in their success. I believe that the only time they ever attempted something in another state was in the 1990s when they opened a store in Louisiana and shut it down a few years later. As far as I could tell, there are no immediate plans to expand anywhere else because there are major advantages to staying contained in your own familiar area. Again, customer loyalty, there's name recognition, distribution, advertising, it's a long list. And Texas is a fantastic place for it because Texans tend to have a lot of pride in their state, and H-E-B takes full advantage of that. I challenge you, just go to their website and count how many times you see the word Texas. They sell a lot of products with ingredients proudly sourced from Texas. They sell Whataburger products, which is a fast food chain very much associated with Texas. They even sell tortilla chips that are shaped like Texas. In fact, you might want to pick up some of those too if you're really going for that ultimate Texas experience. What more can I say? H-E-B is a Texas brand, and in many cases, the pride that people have for Texas transfers over to H-E-B. I am going to stop saying the word Texas for a while as I talk about my next reason, their online operations. I don't have too much to say about this one, but H-E-B has invested quite a bit in e-commerce type things and have seen results from it. In 2012, they launched their website, with their first ever sale from it being a custom cake that someone ordered and then came into the store to pick up. 3 years later, they started their curbside pickup service, where that same cake could now be delivered to someone's car in the parking lot. 3 years after that, they acquired a food delivery service called Favored Delivery and announced plans to open a fancy tech facility in Austin. In 2022, based on a poll of 3,000 people asking about their e-commerce preferences, H-E-B ranked number 1 above Amazon and Walmart and all of the others. My next reason behind their success would be charitable efforts. They have so many different programs that are meant to benefit certain groups of people or the community or victims or whatever. I'm not going to go through all of it in the interest of time, but a few of the categories that stick out would be stuff supporting education, such as the Excellence in Education Awards, where they give away $700,000 in cash prizes to educators each year. Disaster relief has been a big one. In 1933, there was a big hurricane that hit Texas, and they kept their stores open to provide food and supplies to the people that needed it, and ever since, they have been donating money and providing food and water whenever a hurricane hits, such as Harvey in 2017. I should mention they also donated millions of dollars to support local businesses during the pandemic. Probably their biggest charitable effort has been their commitment to donate 5% of all pre-tax profits to charity. Do you remember in the beginning when I said it was impressive that they've grown so large by reinvesting their profits? Well, the fact that they've been donating 5% of them right off the top makes that even more impressive. And obviously, all of these efforts give them publicity and grow loyalty because it makes them look good. My final reason behind the success of H-E-B would be their additional concepts. And by this, I mean that the H-E-B company doesn't just operate the basic H-E-B stores. They have so much more going on. Going all the way back to the 1920s, one of their first attempts ever to expand was by opening a feed store, of all things, that quickly failed. In the 1930s, they bought a canning company that was actually used to provide food to the US military during World War II. They went on to own bakeries, milk plants, ice cream plants, but as far as other store concepts, concepts, they used to operate one called H-E-B Pantry. It was like a similar idea to H-E-B, but with a much more limited selection. It was a chain that grew to more than 35 of them before shutting down in the early 2000s. Another big one would be Video Central. It was a chain of more than 30 video rental stores that they sold in 1994 for $30 million. Today they have a strategy where they operate multiple concepts, all with distinct customer bases, and when they're researching to open a new store, they have to decide which one of them would best fit into that community. Aside from the typical store, they have H-E-B convenience stores that include a gas station. Central Market is intended for higher income individuals. It started as a single store in Austin in 1994 as a farmer's market type place that specialized in obscure items rather than the basic stuff, and has since grown into 10 locations. They have H-E-B Plus that as of 2004, they sell the typical H-E-B products plus other stuff like toys, housewares, party supplies, and apparel. Another one is Mi Tienda. As of 2006, they've been intended to serve the large Latino population in Texas. And the final one is called Joe V's Smart Shop. As of 2010, they've been a discount grocery store strategically placed in lower income communities. So even though they haven't ventured very far geographically, they have done a lot to sell different products that serve different segments of the population. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about H-E-B? If you're from Texas, you are the expert, so please share your experience with them. Do you agree with my reasons behind their success, or do you think there's more to it? And if you're not from Texas, you are far from being an expert, but hopefully this video was interesting and helped expose you to something new. Does it seem like a place you'd like to visit? Does it compare to the stores near you? And any other thoughts you have about H-E-B, leave them in the comments. I'd like to hear what you have to say. Thank you for watching.